The sun rose beautifully that morning in the small, bustling town of Aguleze. But by evening, sorrow had swallowed the light in the Nwankwo household. Debbie Nwankwo, a tall, dark-skinned, 22-year-old with eyes full of dreams, was ironing her uniform when the phone rang. She picked it up, humming a gospel tune, but the voice on the other end was not familiar. Hello? Is this Miss Deborah Nwankwo? Yes, please. Who's speaking? There was a long pause. Then the man said slowly, I'm calling from the Federal Teaching Hospital. Your father, Mr. Emmanuel Nwankwo, was involved in a motor accident. Ah, Jesus. Is he okay? The man sighed. I'm very sorry. He didn't make it. The room spun. Her legs gave way, and she dropped to her knees. No. That day, life changed forever. Debbie's mother fainted when she heard the news. The neighbors rushed in, sprinkled water on her, and wailed louder than the children. The little ones, Nonso, 16, Ebuka, 14, Tiana, 10, and Victor, 7, just stood frozen like statues. None of them could understand the weight of what just happened. A few days later at the burial, Debbie sat quietly beside the coffin, her face pale. Friends and family came and went. People whispered, that girl's life has just ended. Some cried real tears. Others cried to be seen. In the days that followed, their mother could barely eat or get out of bed. She kept coughing, complaining of chest pain. Debbie noticed her mother growing thinner. One night, Debbie sat outside, staring at the moon with Nonso. Debbie, Nonso whispered, who will pay my school fees now? She looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Me, I will. But how? I don't know yet. But I will. In that moment, Debbie made a silent vow. Her dreams would wait. Her family came first. It was 2 weeks after their father's burial. The house felt empty without his booming laughter. His chair in the corner remained untouched, like a shrine. Debbie stared at her school books but couldn't read. Her mind was crowded with worry. Nonso and Ebuka were supposed to return to school in 2 weeks. Tiana needed a new school bag. Victor had outgrown his uniform, and their mom's cough had worsened. The small savings their father left was gone after the funeral expenses. That night, Debbie gathered her siblings in the sitting room. Everyone, sit down, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. They all sat, their eyes fixed on her. I have something to tell you, she continued, forcing a smile. I won't be going back to the university. Eh? Nonso's voice rose. But why? Who will take care of you all? She replied gently. Mommy is not strong and things are hard. I need to start working. But Debbie, you always said you'd become a lawyer, Tiana said, her eyes wide with confusion. Debbie held her hand. And I still want to, just not now. That night, she packed her books, folded her black and white uniforms, and kept them in a box under the bed. Her dreams were now tucked away like old clothes. The next day, she went to the local market. After asking around, she got a small spot beside an old woman who sold vegetables. With the little money she had, Debbie bought some groundnuts, sweets, and chewing gum. She sat under the sun, selling to passers-by, smiling even when her stomach growled from hunger. Debbie, you are here? It was Aisha, a childhood friend. Debbie smiled weakly. My new office? Ha! God forbid bad thing. This isn't your life. Debbie looked at her, her smile fading. It is now. That evening, after the market closed, she counted her gain, 3,250 naira. She used 2,000 naira to buy pain medicine and fruits for their mom, 1,000 naira for Tiana's school bag, and kept 250 naira for the next day's goods. She hadn't eaten all day, but as she watched her siblings laugh over roasted corn that night, her heart smiled. 2 months passed. Debbie had now settled into her new routine. She would wake early, cook for her siblings, prepare them for school, check on their mom, and then head to the market. Her hands were darker from sunburn, her body leaner from skipped meals, but her spirit still burning with quiet strength. But one person who couldn't understand this new Debbie was her fiancé. He was a young, promising engineer working with a private firm. They had been together for 4 years, and everyone knew they were meant to marry. Their wedding had been planned before her dad's sudden death. This evening, Michael came to visit. He hadn't seen her in weeks. Her smile lit up, but his face fell. "You look tired," he said. She nodded. "I am." They sat outside. "Debbie," he began after a long silence, "you're changing." She looked at him surprised. "Michael, I lost my father. I had to drop out of school. I'm raising 4 children. Of course I'm changing." I know, he said, "but you're forgetting yourself. You've forgotten us. You cancelled the wedding." "I postponed it," she corrected. "We don't have money, and my mother is sick. I can't marry now." He stood up. "That's the problem. You're throwing away your life for them. You're becoming a shadow of the woman I fell in love with. Michael, I'm the firstborn. If I don't carry them, who will?" "But what about me?" he asked, voice shaking. "What about us?" Debbie swallowed hard, tears in her eyes. "You'll always be in my heart. But right now my family needs me more." Michael stared at her for a long moment. "I can't wait forever, Debbie. I never asked you to." He drove off without saying goodbye. That night, Debbie cried into her pillow, but not loud enough to wake the children. The weight of sacrifice was heavy, but she carried it still. By the end of that week, their mom's cough grew worse. "Debbie, water?" Debbie rushed in and helped her sit up. Her mother's eyes looked sunken, and her bones were sharp against her skin. "Mommy, you need to eat." She shook her head slowly. "I can't keep anything down." Debbie sat beside her, wiping her forehead. "We're going to the hospital tomorrow. I've saved enough." True to her word, Debbie took her to Christ the Healer Hospital the next morning. After several tests, the doctor came out, frowning. "She's very weak, malnourished. The stress after your father's death is taking a toll." "Is it serious?" Debbie asked. The doctor nodded. "You'll need to get a nurse. She needs daily care and food, plenty of rest. Can you afford it?" I'll manage." And she did. She met Auntie Lovett, a retired nurse living 3 streets away, who agreed to come 3 times a week for a small fee. "I'll pay every Friday," Debbie promised, handing over the first 4,000 naira from her market profit. "You're a good girl," Auntie Lovett said. That night, Debbie went to the backyard to cry. She wept silently until she heard footsteps. It was Tiana. "Debbie, I had a bad dream," the little girl said, wiping her eyes. "You were gone." Debbie hugged her tightly. "I'm not going anywhere, my love. Promise, I promise." Years rolled by like wind, fast, cold, and full of dust. Debbie's days became a rhythm of pain, purpose, and prayer. Nonso had traveled abroad. It took her 6 years of loans, sleepless nights, selling everything sellable, even begging at times. She joined a cooperative society and borrowed until she was neck deep in debt. But she kept at it. Each time she saw Nonso's tired face as he worked in the bakery part-time after school, she told herself, he must have a better life. He must succeed. "Once Nonso settles," she told her mom one night, "he'll send something. We'll breathe again." And he did. The day she received his first $100, Debbie danced around the compound like a child. She used it to pay some debt and buy malaria drugs for Victor. She still lived in the same old 2-room house with their mom and Victor. Her clothes were simple, her shoes cracked, and her dreams buried somewhere beneath old market bags and fading loan books. She now sold rice, beans and stew by the roadside in a corner of Aguleze Junction with a faded umbrella and a small wooden bench. Rain or shine, she was there. Debbie was now 35, still unmarried, still waking up before dawn to cook and sell food. She had no certificate, no time for hobbies, and no relationship. Her last heartbreak, Michael had married someone else 2 years ago. Her body now ached when she carried her pots. Her palms were full of calluses, but she kept going. Meanwhile, Ebuka had finished university and was now a copper. Victor was in his final year. Tiana, the youngest, shocked everyone. She married a wealthy businessman in her 300 level. She said she couldn't continue suffering when someone was ready to change her life. Only Debbie remained where she started. When neighbors praised her, saying, "Debbie, you're a true mother," she would wipe her sweat and reply, "My reward is seeing them succeed." But deep inside, at night, when she lay alone on her mat, her heart whispered, "Who will carry me now?" At first, Debbie believed things would change, that once her siblings were stable, they'd help her rise again. But as the months rolled by, her phone rang less. The once excited voices faded into short cold replies. One evening, Debbie called Nonso. "Hello, Nonso?" Her voice cracked with joy. "Ah, Debbie. Hi." He sounded cold. "Hope you're fine. We've not heard from you in a while." He sighed. "Debbie, please don't start. Things are not easy here. I can't keep sending money like before. Rent here is high, food expensive. I even borrowed to renew my papers." Her heart dropped. "But you promised. The rent is due." "I know," he snapped. "But Debbie, I have my own life. You're not my mother." Silence. "You're not our mother," he repeated, as if to stab her gently. Debbie ended the call with shaking hands. Her chest felt tight. For minutes, she just stared at the wall. She had expected that once Nonso settled, life would change for them all. That she could rest. That maybe, just maybe, she could take a part-time course in the university. That night, she didn't eat. She just lay on the floor, staring at the rusted ceiling fan that didn't spin anymore. Then Ebuka, the one with the smooth talk, got posted to Abuja for NYSC. Debbie sent him 10,000 naira from her petty trade to help him settle in. 3 months later, she asked, "Ebuka, can you help with Victor's books? He needs 5,000 naira. "Debbie," he laughed, "do you know how small my alawi is? You think I'm working in oil company?" She forced a smile. "It's okay." Even Tiana, now living in her husband's mansion, hardly called. When she did, her words came cold and sharp. "Auntie Debbie, you need to upgrade yourself. You're still selling food at your age. That's why people don't respect you." Debbie forced a laugh. "My hands are feeding mommy and your brothers." "You're not their mother, Debbie," Tiana said flatly. "Stop carrying cross that's not yours." Debbie sat in silence after the call, her chest heavy. Even Victor, who used to hug her before going to school, now grunted in greeting. His friends teased him. "Your sister, they sell food for Junction." They'd laugh. And he started walking faster past her spot every morning. Love had turned cold, and Debbie was starting to feel it. One evening, Aisha visited and saw her friend stirring a big pot of beans. "Debbie, how long will you do this?" she asked. Debbie wiped sweat from her face. "Until I die, maybe." Aisha was quiet for a long time, then whispered, "You gave them your whole life." Debbie nodded. "And now they treat me like I'm nothing." "Why, Debbie? After everything you did for them, they don't remember?" "Let them forget. I remember." She looked up at the sky, tears resting in her eyes. "God sees," she whispered. "One day, he'll remember me too, Just when Debbie was beginning to find a fragile sense of peace, life struck again, this time cruelly and without warning. It was a hot Wednesday afternoon when the fire started. No one knew exactly how it began. Some said it was an electrical fault from one of the stalls. Others blamed a careless food vendor. But within minutes, thick black smoke rose into the sky above the central market, and panic spread like wildfire. Traders screamed, buckets of water were flung in every direction, and goods were thrown out in haste. Debbie was at the back of her stall, storing a large pot of jollof rice, when she noticed the commotion. By the time she realized what was happening, the flames were already licking the wooden roofs. She tried to salvage something, anything, but the heat pushed her back. And before her eyes, her small food stall, the business she had built with her sweat, tears, and years of sacrifice, was swallowed by fire. She stood there, helpless, as the entire market turned into chaos. Her shop, her only source of income, was gone. The pots, the stove, the wooden shelves, the bowls, the sacks of rice and tomatoes she had bought on credit, all reduced to ashes. When the fire finally died down and the last of the smoke curled into the air, Debbie fell to her knees in the soot-covered ground. She clutched her head and let out a heart-wrenching wail, a cry so deep it echoed through the broken stalls. People tried to comfort her, but she couldn't hear them. All she could see was the life she had worked so hard to build, reduced to nothing. Tears soaked her face as she stared at the blackened ground where her shop used to be. She thought she had faced the worst before, but this felt like a cruel joke from life itself. With nothing left but the clothes on her back, Debbie sat there shaking, wondering how much more she was meant to endure. Debbie returned home that evening, her clothes still smelling of smoke. When she stepped into the house she shared with her mother, the old woman looked up from a chair, concern etched across her frail face. Debbie couldn't hold it in. The moment her mother asked what had happened, the tears returned in full force. She collapsed beside her and sobbed, explaining everything. The fire, the loss, the hopelessness that now shadowed her every thought. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, and she held Debbie tightly. But there wasn't much else she could do. Age and illness had reduced her strength, and her financial means were even weaker. She muttered words of comfort, prayed softly, but Debbie could feel it. She was truly on her own. She didn't mention the incident to her siblings. What was the point? Debbie stared at the ceiling that night. She had never felt so empty. For the first time in her life, even after all the years of sacrifice, she realized no one was coming to save her. As if losing her shop wasn't enough, the rent that had been long overdue finally caught up with her. Debbie had hoped to patch things up with the little she had saved, maybe plead with the landlord for more time. But the fire had taken everything, including her means of survival. The landlord, a heartless man with no patience for pity stories, stormed into their compound 2 days after the fire. He didn't want to hear explanations. He didn't want to hear about market fire or personal tragedy. All he wanted was his money. When Debbie couldn't pay, he threw them out, her and her frail mother, right there in front of neighbors. Their belongings were scattered like trash on the roadside. Her mother wept in shame as Debbie tried to gather what little they had left. With nowhere else to go, Debbie did the one thing she had hoped to avoid. She swallowed her pride and took her mother to her younger sister's house. It was a beautiful home, tucked inside a gated estate, surrounded by trimmed hedges and expensive silence. When Debbie knocked on the door that evening, her sister's face fell the moment she saw them. She didn't hide her irritation. After a few uncomfortable minutes of awkward standing and tension-filled silence, her sister spoke with the kind of calm that stung more than shouting ever could. She said she could house their mother for now, but couldn't do the same for Debbie. Not because she didn't care, she explained, but because her husband wouldn't like it. He was very particular about family boundaries. And Debbie, as an unmarried woman with no job or clear future, would only bring discomfort to their home. "She's your sister," her mother said weakly, pleading with her eyes. But the younger woman smiled and gently helped their mother inside. Debbie stood there at the door, heart crushed, mouth dry. Her sister didn't offer her a place to sit, didn't ask if she had eaten, didn't even offer her water. The message was clear: you are not welcome here. And so, that night, Debbie walked away in the dark, homeless, jobless, alone. The sky opened up not long after Debbie left her sister's estate. At first, it was a light drizzle, but within minutes, heavy rain began to pour. She had no umbrella, no shelter, no destination. Her wrapper clung to her shivering body, and her feet splashed through muddy puddles as she wandered aimlessly down the quiet street. She hugged herself tightly, tears mixing with the rain as they streamed down her face. Her body trembled from cold, but her spirit trembled more. For years, she had poured herself out for her family. Now, when she had nothing, no one could pour even a drop back into her. She was truly alone. No home, no food, no job, no friend in sight, not even a stranger to offer her a dry spot to sit. The world slipped away quietly. No loud crash, no dramatic collapse, just a slow fade, like a candle giving up its last flicker. Debbie blacked out, her body finally surrendering to the pain, the cold, and the weight of everything she'd carried for so long. She didn't know how much time had passed, but when her eyes fluttered open, the first thing she noticed was warmth. Not just the absence of cold, but actual warmth. Soft, thick blankets wrapped around her. Where was she? A soft creak at the door made her flinch, but a man stepped in, tall with worried eyes and a calm presence. He didn't smile, but he didn't look threatening either. He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat, watching her with cautious relief. "You scared me," he said gently. "You just walked into the road like someone in a trance. I almost hit you with my car. I couldn't just leave you there. You collapsed before I could ask anything. I brought you here, my house, had my doctor check you. He said you were lucky, just cold, exhausted, and starving. You've been out for hours." Debbie blinked, still trying to process everything. He didn't know her. She didn't know him. And yet, here she was, clean, warm, and alive. Her lips parted to speak, but her throat was too dry. He quickly reached for water and helped her sit up to drink. "Don't worry," he added. "You're safe now." Safe. For the first time in a very, very long time. She was. "Where am I?" He turned to her and replied, "My home. My name is Daniel." She gave a slow nod, unsure what to say. The kindness of a stranger was confusing. In a world that had kicked her at her lowest, someone had lifted her without expecting anything in return. "Why?" He seemed to sense her thoughts. "I don't usually bring strangers home," he said. "But you looked lost, not just on the road. Everything about you said you were running from something, or maybe nothing was left to run from." "I'm not asking for details," Daniel added. "But if you need time to rest, you can have it. Food is downstairs, close to if you want to bathe and change. No pressure." With that, he gave her one last nod and quietly stepped out. Debbie sat there for a long time, staring at the closed door. She didn't know who Daniel truly was, or why fate had crossed their paths. But for the first time in months, she felt something unexpected, a moment to breathe. Days passed quietly in Daniel's house. Debbie rested, ate real food, slept on soft sheets, and slowly recovered from the cold grip of hunger and hopelessness. She didn't ask questions, and Daniel didn't push her. He simply allowed her to heal in peace. After a few days, when her strength returned and her voice was steady again, they finally sat down to talk properly. He told her his name, Daniel Etim, and explained that he ran a growing chain of agro-processing businesses, mostly dealing in food supplies and export. Not one to flaunt wealth, he spoke humbly. But Debbie could tell he was a man of means and discipline. Debbie listened quietly, still unsure why a man like this had shown kindness to someone like her. When he asked about her, she told him the truth, but only briefly. She explained how she had run a small food stall in the market, how fire had swallowed it whole, how she had nothing to fall back on, not even family. Her voice broke when she mentioned being thrown out of her house. When she finished, she expected the usual polite sorry or that awkward silence people give when they don't know what else to say. But Daniel didn't do either. Instead, he said, "You're a strong woman. You don't need pity. You need support, and I can help you. If you're willing, I can give you money to restart your food business properly. Something better than what you had before. You can stay here for now in the servants' quarters behind the house. It's empty, furnished, and private." Debbie's eyes filled with tears. Instantly, she tried to speak, but choked on her own emotions. Her hands trembled as she covered her face and wept loud, grateful tears. After all the rejection, after the fire, after being thrown into the streets and treated like nothing, here was a man who didn't know her but chose to show her mercy. She fell to her knees and cried, thanking him, thanking God over and over. In that moment, she knew it wasn't just kindness, it was divine. It was mercy reaching down from heaven. Months passed, and Debbie's life transformed in ways she never imagined. With Daniel's support, she started her food business again, this time bigger and better. He didn't just give her money. He connected her with suppliers, helped her register the business, and guided her through the basics of running it like a proper company. She named the place Debbie's Pot, a simple but powerful reminder of who she was and what she had overcome. Her new shop sat in a busy corner of the city, painted in warm colors and always filled with the smell of sizzling stew, spicy pepper soup, and fried plantain. People came from all over just to taste her food. She had regular customers now, bankers, office workers, even students. She was hiring assistants and talking about expansion. But this time, Debbie didn't just focus on survival or pleasing others. She focused on herself. She learned to say no without guilt. She started waking up early, not because she had to, but because she loved what she did. She dressed well, kept her hair neat, and carried herself with quiet confidence. She was healing, slowly, steadily. One warm evening, just as Debbie was closing her shop, Daniel walked in, not with his usual calm smile and friendly hello, but with a look of seriousness she hadn't seen before. He waited until they were alone, then sat across from her and spoke gently but firmly. "I've watched you grow, fight, and rise," he said. "You're not just a strong woman, Debbie. You're everything I admire in a partner. I don't want to keep watching from the sidelines. I want you in my life officially. I want to marry you." Debbie froze. For a moment, she just stared at him, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Marriage? Her? After everything? Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of the moment. After a long silence, she nodded slowly. "If you're sure," she whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything." He told her he wanted to meet her mother, as tradition demanded, and though hesitant at first, Debbie agreed. She took him to her younger sister's house, where their mother still stayed. The moment they stepped into the compound, her sister opened the door and froze, her eyes widened. First at Debbie, radiant in a neat dress, glowing, confident, nothing like the woman she had tossed away months ago. Then her gaze shifted to the man beside her. Shock registered on her face immediately. You're Daniel Etim? She asked, stunned. The Daniel Etim of Fresh Harvest Group? Daniel gave a small nod. Her sister staggered slightly, eyes darting between Debbie and him. You're with my sister. Debbie didn't flinch. She looked her sister dead in the eye. Yes, he's the one who picked me up the night you turned me away. He saved my life. He believed in me. We're getting married. But don't worry, I'm not inviting any of you. Not you, not the one in Canada, not the one in Abuja, not the last born, none of you. The silence was deafening. Her sister blinked, stunned. The mother tried to step in gently. Debbie, my daughter, please. They are still your blood. They didn't know things would turn out like this. Let us. I'm not talking about it, Debbie said flatly. I came here for one thing, to introduce my fiancé to his future mother-in-law. Nothing else. Her mother's bleeding eyes searched her face, but Debbie didn't flinch. She had carried too much for too long. Her forgiveness was silent, but her boundaries were firm. The weeks leading to the wedding were filled with activity, fittings, food tasting, venue inspection, and calls from vendors. Everything was moving smoothly, but one issue kept coming up like an unwelcome shadow: her siblings. Daniel brought it up more than once. Debbie, don't you think it's time to let go and invite them? They're your family. I don't want any part of you walking down that aisle with regret. I walked in the rain, Daniel. I was starving and homeless. They didn't care. Now they don't get to stand beside me on the best day of my life. It's not revenge. It's closure. Still, Daniel tried one more time, asking gently, what about your younger brother? The one still in school? Debbie turned to him slowly, voice low but sharp. He only remembered me when he needed money. I was nothing more than an ATM to them. Let them stay where they were. Daniel respected her decision, even if he didn't fully agree. But one person who fully stood by her was Aisha. They don't deserve to share your light, Aisha said bluntly. Where were they when you were drenched in the rain, when you had to sleep outside, when you were tossed from your sister's house like a stray? They're ungrateful and selfish. This wedding is for you, not for appearances. You owe them nothing. Debbie nodded, the knot in her chest loosening slightly. The wedding day arrived. Debbie walked in on her mother's arm. Her gown was simple but regal, her smile calm, her spirit steady. No siblings, no empty chairs reserved for anyone who didn't stand with her when it mattered. Aisha stood proudly as maid of honor, never once leaving her side. Every glance, every word, every tear was genuine. And Daniel, he looked at her like a man who knew he had struck gold. As the officiating minister declared them husband and wife, Debbie felt no sadness, no bitterness, just peace. The wedding reception was already in full swing, and Debbie, now Mrs. Etim, was finally beginning to breathe in her happiness. Seated at the elegantly decorated couple's table, she smiled at Daniel, who gently squeezed her hand in silent celebration. Then, the unexpected happened. The MC cleared his throat and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise guest all the way from Canada. Please welcome Mr. Nonso." Debbie's smile froze, head stunned, and there he was, her brother, Nonso, walking confidently to the stage in a well-tailored suit. Behind him, she spotted her sister and two other siblings sitting at a table near her mother. The shock nearly knocked the air from her lungs. Her mother wouldn't meet her eyes. Aisha leaned forward immediately, whispering sharply, "What nonsense is this?" They weren't invited. Debbie stood, fury boiling in her veins. She was ready to walk out. Daniel caught her arm gently, his voice soft but urgent. "Please, just hear him out, Debbie." With clenched fists and trembling lips, Debbie sat back down. Nonso stood on the stage, clearing his throat. He began, "I know I wasn't invited. None of us were. And after what we allowed to happen, we don't deserve to be. But I begged Mommy to help me bring us here because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try." The whole grew quiet. "I was in Canada, yes, chasing dreams, making money. But I never asked what Debbie gave up so I could go. It was her, Debbie, who sold everything so I could pay my visa fee. She skipped meals for us. She gave us everything. And when life crushed her, we all disappeared." He paused, voice shaking. "I came here not just to witness her joy, but to ask for her forgiveness publicly. To tell everyone here that this woman, this bride, is the reason all of us had a chance in life." Tears filled the eyes of many guests. Even Aisha's face softened. Daniel looked at Debbie, his eyes quietly pleading. Debbie's eyes remained cold. She didn't move. Nonso ended with a whisper, "I don't expect a hug. I don't expect a seat at your table. I just wanted the world to know who you truly are and to say thank you." And with that, he stepped off the stage and returned to his table. Debbie looked at her husband, then at Aisha. She didn't cry, she didn't smile, but she stayed. And for Debbie, that was a beginning. "Hi, babes. Ashake here. What would you do if you were in Debbie's shoes? Forgive them or cut them off for good? Let me know in the comment section. Subscribe if you haven't. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. I'll see you in my next one.